It's time. I've got a brief introduction. Many of you will have heard it or something similar. It's primarily for the audience's understanding of what's going on here tonight. I hope to be brief about it. And then we're going to ask you all to simply identify your first speaker by name, please. You got a lot of folks here tonight. And to make the presentation, it doesn't have to be all that person, but we'll let each one introduce the next. Then the QVNA representatives, as they wish, will, the zoning committee representatives will ask some questions. South Street Headhouse, represented by Mike Harris and his colleagues, will ask whatever questions they want. And then we will welcome questions from the other neighborhood participants in the meeting. Please understand that in order to make a comment, ask a question, you will have to submit your question via chat. Lucy, am I right about that?
Yes, that would be preferred if we can do it by chat, and I'm just checking. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So here goes, folks. Welcome. This is a meeting of the Queen Village Neighbors Association Zoning Committee and Mike Harrison, members of Society Hill Headhouse Business District. I am Peter Piven, the Zoning Committee Chair. I'm here with committee members Amy Rivera, Sam Olchin, Emily Persetz, Tanya Nikolic, Noah Swistak, and Rich Carroll. I do expect all of them. I hope I'm right. Today is a regular committee meeting day, but not a regular meeting. We are here tonight to review the developer's presentation of the project proposed for 419 Bainbridge Street, which is part of the City Planning Commission's Civic Design review process. There's no refusal to cite because they are building the project as of right. However, because of the project size, number of units, it must be presented to Civic Design Review, which will review the project for design elements that include various things: building entrances, ground floor use, location of parking, loading, building materials, design details, sidewalk space, things like that. Civic Design Review process requires that the project be presented to registered community organizations associated with the neighborhood. I've already mentioned that QVNA and SSHD will be here. Although this matter is not our usual review for a requested variance, we will review it in the overall interest of the neighborhood. Following the meeting, QVNA and SSHD will prepare and submit summary letters representing the perspectives of the residential and business communities to the CDR committee, which will make recommendations to L&I, which may follow their recommendations, but are not bound to do so, similar to QVNA's process regarding requests for variances. Tonight, as I mentioned, we're going to request the applicants to briefly present their projects. QVNA members will, and then Society Hill Headhouse board members will, South Street Headhouse, sorry, will ask questions, and then we will ask for questions or comments from the community members present. Enter the comments, enter your name and comment in the chat function after the committee has asked theirs. We like to avoid repeated questions. Lucy Erdelak, the QVNA exec, will monitor the requests, direct the appropriate party to respond. We do not intend to take a vote from the community members present. We're going to use our judgment and experience to determine whether the project is in the neighborhood's best interest based on the facts and the merits presented at the meeting. Final decisions, as I said, on the project will be made by L&I, taking into account the recommendations of the Civic Design Review Committee, with a hearing date to be determined. So that is what I have to say about it. I hope you will be complete but concise. I welcome your first presenter to speak.
Well, thank you, Peter, for that very thorough introduction. We appreciate it. And thank you for accommodating us this evening outside of your normal routine. My name is Stephanie Magana. I am with the law firm of Claire Harrison here on behalf of Elcor and Easy Park, the property owner and the developer. I am joined this evening by Michael McCloskey from Bernardin, who's our project architect. I believe Kevin Tatlow from Bowler is here as well as our civil engineer for the project. And we do have representatives from Elcor and Easy Park here as well to answer questions kind of as we go through the initial presentation. And Peter did a more thorough job than most at explaining where we are, but just as some procedural context for this project. Some of you may recall that a prior iteration of the design of this project was proposed a couple years ago. At that point in time, the project was going to require variance relief. But since then, the project has been reimagined to not only be an improvement on what was originally proposed, we believe, but also to be code compliant. So several weeks ago, we received a conditional zoning permit from the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Issuance of our final zoning permit and then subsequent building permits are contingent upon our completion of the Civic Design review process, which gives us the opportunity to present the project to you all this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike. And as we go through this, we are all more than happy to answer any questions as they come up.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael McCluskey. I'm a principal with Bernardin. We're the architectural firm representing Elkhorn Easy Park on this project. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So we're going to walk you through the Civic Design review submission. The latest date is January 12th for tonight's meeting. This was submitted, I believe, on December 23rd originally for our initial pre-CDR meeting that we had with the city yesterday. So I'm going to jump past summary. Here's our CDR project application form. Little jumpy here. So I'm going to zoom in here and show you, the site. We're located at the corner of East Passyunk and Bainbridge Street. South Lithgow is basically to the east. And, it's near the intersection of South Fifth at this point. So here's some aerial photography. Looking around, we were able to drone the site. Currently, the project site is an existing surface parking lot. Some surrounding site photographs around the neighborhood. And this is an existing plan, existing condition plan showing the varying depths of parking spaces on the current site. I'm going to jump one more sheet here and start to talk about our proposed ground floor plan. So what we have here is a mixed-use residential building. The ground floor is going to contain 2 independent retail spaces. Retail space A here, which is at the corner of Bainbridge and Passyunk. That will contain almost about 4,000 square feet of retail space. And then here at the corner of Lithgow and Bainbridge will be our retail space B. Next to the retail space B will be our loading enclosure. That loading enclosure will have the ability to have a 40-foot and a 30-foot vehicle. We were requested by the Streets Department to contain a 30-foot vehicle within that loading space. Off there, all of our trash and everything will be serviced within the inside of the building, including a retail section and a independent residential section. Next to the loading will be our main lobby. And next to that will be a bike storage room that'll have access to a common corridor that will get residents right out to the street with their bikes. Having the loading space right next to our lobby really is going to require us to architecturally treat that with some sensitivity. We want to be very sensitive to that loading space and really make it as beautiful as we possibly can. So, having it next to the lobby is something that we're taking very seriously.
Mike, could you zoom in real quick? I think people are having trouble seeing the detail on the plan. Thank you.
Okay. So what you'll see here as I kind of zoom up a little bit here, the parking area that is covered in orange is actually covered parking. So that's the portion of the building that is has building a portion of the ground floor that has building above, and then everything that's white is open to the sky. So what you'll see here is green space at the back, tree wells along Bainbridge and Passyunk, and all of our covered parking spaces that would be happening right in here. At the north side, we have a stair tower and electric room, and we have our reserved spaces as you come in before we get through the parking control access. We will also have electric vehicle parking and auto share spaces. The auto share spaces will be on the public side of the parking area. Next slide here will be more of a traditional, floor plan for the building. What you'll see is a varying size of units on this project. We have some larger 2 bedrooms, maybe about 1,100 to 1,200 square feet, down to some smaller studios, and pretty much everything in between. You'll see traditional 1 bedroom, some junior 1 bedroom, some studios, and our 2 bedrooms. Some of them will have balconies, some will not, some will have Juliettes, and you can see a little bit more of that in the architecture as we move forward here. This is our planting plan, giving a little bit more detail to what we showed conceptually before, but we spent a large amount of time really coordinating the amount of tree opportunities we could really present along the 2 major street fronts, really giving 5-foot deep tree wells along there to give some trees a chance to really grow. So we've dedicated a good amount of space along the street frontage to promote as much greenery as we possibly can. Architecturally, you'll start to see how the building is laid out. So here's a black and white 3-dimensional view, Lithgow and Bainbridge. It is a 7-story building with a rooftop amenity terrace. And this is the north side of the building, seeing the neighboring 2- and 3-story row homes as we go up Passyunk mixed use along there. This diagram illustrates the type of construction. This is what is commonly referred to as a 5/2. So there will be the ground floor, which is fully non-combustible, the second floor, which is full residential floor with some amenitized space that would be also non-combustible, and then we have 5 stories of wood frame construction with exterior non-combustible walls for the remaining of the space vertically. This diagram here shows how the building is broken up. So the red highlights red highlights retail along the corners as we talked about Lithgow and Bainbridge, and then Passyunk and Bainbridge here. The blue represents residential, the yellow represents amenitized space within the building. And then all of the green really is just going to represent vertical circulation or back of house. The orange is going to show the parking accesses off Lithgow here. And to the north, the open air parking back here. These are the architectural elevations. I'm going to skip through these rather quickly to get to the perspectives that show it in a little bit more detail. This is our proposed materials. So we have a mix of a orangey reddish brick, a dark black brick, some masonry, some fiber cement siding, a large amount of metal panel, some wood look siding, and another variation of metal panel on the building. This is our building section through the site. So this is essentially going along Passyunk, and then this is an east-west section showing the size of the building, the elevator overruns, stair towers, and then the rooftop amenity. So this is the proposed renderings. This is from the corner of Bainbridge and Passyunk, showing the proposed main corner of the building. Architecturally, we have kind of a decomposing brick facade that starts to break down over time and then be picked up with a variety of different brick accents there. And then what happens within the shell of the building is really a little bit more of a modern structure that is more glass, more metal panel, a little bit more of a sleek look. This is on Passyunk, almost looking at a shot right through the open space here where you see some of the balconies that are going to start at the 3rd floor, give access and views to the residents back towards Center City. And then this is kind of the end that's going to face Passyunk. This is from the corner of Lithgow and Bainbridge. So this shows how kind of the orangish red brick starts to incorporate with the darker kind of black charcoal gray brick, and how that starts to really give emphasis to the retail and entrance along this main corner. And this rendering is really going to highlight the main residential entrance for the residents. It's a relatively small lobby, just a little bit over 1,800 or so square feet. It would have a leasing space within it, really a flexible lobby that would give residents some space to be able to wait for an Uber or whatnot, and really give access to the parking or the bike parking and bike storage and the elevators and stair towers for the project. Lastly, the rendering here is going to highlight the view, the proposed view back towards Center City from the rooftop terrace. This is our sustainability checklist for the city. And then last, we get into our Complete Streets Handbook checklist, which is finalized and filled out. So with that, that's everything we have at this point with our CDR package.
Does that conclude the presentation of your team?
Pete, unless there's anything else you want to add, it does, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, Mike, good job. Thanks.
Okay, then QVNA Zoning Committee members, questions from you. I can't see you in the way that the screen is being shared right now. So just note in the chat column to Lucy, please, that you have a question.
If you would, Mike, would you please stop sharing your screen so then we can see the members of
Yeah.
the
No problem.
committee?
Okay.
Great, thank you.
So now, Lucy, are hands up okay by our guys?
Yes, or they can unmute themselves and the speaker, whoever's speaking, will be seen on the big screen.
Okay. So let me just call names, and that way we'll eliminate some of the confusion. Sam, if you're with us, any questions at this point? Sam may not be here. Lucy,
I'm here, Peter.
oh, great. Okay, question, Sam.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about who the prospective retail tenants are and who you've solicited, and perhaps why, I guess, the big one in the corner is not actually at the same grade as Bainbridge and Passyunk, but you have a little ramp to access it. And maybe the last question is, why is the loading dock right next to the entry? Because you have acknowledged that's an issue. How do you want to handle that?
Who would like to speak for the applicant?
Kevin, you want to take a couple of those, or do you want me to take them?
Sure, I can take it, Mike. As far as the there's some slight grade change across the site, so that's why along Passyunk it's a little higher than the rest of the site. So that's will require the need for the interior ramps there.
And the other questions?
The loading dock location, Kevin?
Yep, and then as far as the loading dock, initially we were trying to put it separated away closer to Lithgow and kind of have the retail and the lobby be further down towards Passyunk. But based off our coordination with Streets Department, we need to provide some separation between that loading dock curb cut and Lithgow. So that requires us to shift it down further to at least provide about 40 feet there from Lithgow, and then have the retail space be located at the corner there.
And also the turning radius for the 40-foot truck that they're requesting us to get within there. We did a variety of different turning templates, looking at it, loading off Lithgow or loading off of Bainbridge, and we just felt we definitely didn't want it off Passyunk. So, kind of forced into the location where it is at this point.
Correct. Yeah, that was one of the things. Streets didn't want us to have any kind of loading directly off Passyunk. So with that, the worst case is a 40-foot truck might need to access it, that it made sense for it to be located on Bainbridge for the truck circulation.
So you're gonna have a no parking zone that's striped to accommodate a 40-foot truck in front of the main entrance to the building? Is that what you're kind of being forced to do?
Not in front of the whole building, just where the curb cut is. Like, it's going to be able to just back right into the loading dock.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, let's go down the line. Amy, questions from you at this point?
Yes. Where is the ground face CMU being used?
That is being used back at the rear, basically around the elevator. The electric room and stair tower at the rear.
Okay. My other question is, I had asked this at previous hearings for this building, when it was a different building. Bainbridge Street is probably wide enough to be striped as 2 lanes. Has anybody investigated that? I think it would really help. Bainbridge Street gets very backed up, and now you have a loading dock. And access to a parking lot. I just think it would really help if that could be striped as 2 lanes. I brought this up before. I don't know if it ever got looked at.
That's something we could, I guess we could certainly take under consideration and speak with streets about.
Yeah, ultimately that'd be streets department, since it's a public street. So, but that's something we could have a discussion with them, see what they would permit.
That's it for me.
Okay, Emily, if you are with us, any questions right now? Tanya, any questions right now?
The only question I had was following up on Sam's question. Are you able to kind of share the tenants you're talking with as prospective occupants of that first floor? If you could answer.
Yeah, sorry about that, Sam. Pete, is that something you want to talk to?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Tanya. I'm Pete DeLulla with Elcor. At this point, we're really not at the stage where we're talking to prospective tenants yet. And we've certainly spoken to retail brokers and whatnot about what might be good size, good use. Certainly we're looking for tenants that will service the neighborhood and be an amenity to the neighborhood. We of course have a very vested interest in positive retail tenancy in the building, as it will be, serving our residents above as well as the rest of the neighborhood. But at this point, it's really too early to engage tenants in those conversations.
And we do have flexibility in the way that the building's currently designed, with exhaust being able to be taken up to the roof in case it is some sort of restaurant tenant or things like that, to give the developers the utmost flexibility for both of those spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, Noah, any questions at this point?
Yeah, does the team have a shadow study it's able to share with everyone?
We do not.
Answers that. And Rich, questions now, Rich?
Yeah, I have a couple questions and maybe a couple comments. You guys are showing 10 different exterior materials. Have you guys looked at kind of trying to scale that back a little bit? The exterior is a little busy. I think it's even busy for that location. From a subjective point of view, I'd like to see that be a little bit more streamlined and a little less talky. It's a quite loud building, especially at the corner of Passyunk and Bainbridge. So that would be, I guess, a question is coming out of that. Would you be willing to look at maybe a refinement of the material palette and the composition? And along with that, you talked about the loading dock and it being in proximity to the lobby and taking great care, but I didn't really see any images of what the loading dock actually looks like. So what are you, it looks like there's some bollards there. What are you proposing as a screening device or not? Is it just a void? What have you got going on there?
So there is one rendering. I could bring it up if need be. It's the one from the corner of Lithgow and Bainbridge, but we are showing investing a lot of dollars into a very nice loading door. So a frosted glass, something that would be very, very similar to the architecture expression along the ground floor, along there with, a very nice garage door that would hide all that, but still give the ability for access. And to your first question, certainly we can take that under consideration.
I appreciate that. So it's going to be, if we're going to have two tractor trailers side by side, 30 foot and a 40 foot, it's going to be one really large garage door, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
So it's like a 24-foot wide door, essentially.
But roughly how high would that be to accommodate trucks like that, especially if they have a cowl on top of them?
They really would not be tractor trailers pulling in there, and they would be smaller U-Haul type trucks and straight body, big box truck types. I don't think any WB type trucks would be able to get down in there, but the height is something we still need to coordinate. I think we have it up to a 10-foot height right now is the door.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just, looking at the types of trucks that service buildings like that, a box truck is probably, you're right, a box truck's probably the more common truck, but in reality, there may be times where you're gonna get a short bed trailer being backed in there, and that's gonna be higher than a box truck.
Sure, that's definitely something we'll coordinate once we get more defined retail tenants and understanding that whole sequence.
Okay. Yeah, especially if it winds up being restaurant type, those food service trucks, because I've got 2 restaurants right 4 doors away from my house, and I just had a food service truck with a 28-foot body, but it was a trailer, so
Got it.
they take up a lot of room. And then my final question is street trees. You talked about them taking a lot of care again with the street trees. Looking at the types, you've got American hornbeam, you've got a honey locust, and you've got a sweet gum. The building's pretty pushed up to the curb line, and you've got, as you said, 5-foot tree wells in there. Those 3 trees have fairly large canopies at maturity. I always hate seeing trees grow and then we have to cut the backside of them off because they're pushing into the building. My one thought here is, based on experience, would be a tree that's more columnar, but having more of them, so a greater frequency of tree wells instead of the larger canopies. Especially the hornbeam. That's a pretty big canopy, and it's really going to push into that building. If I'm not looking at where the varieties are located, but if they are the ones along the curb line, that's going to wind up being problematic. So I'd ask you guys just to go back and take a second look at those and see if there's a better approach to that. I mean, it's great to have street trees along Bainbridge there, and definitely along past Young. So thank you for doing that. But I definitely don't want to see a tree service in there cutting them back 3 years in.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't want to speak for you, but I suspect that's no problem. Your LA team, we can coordinate that and take a look at that.
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at the species to see if there's anything might be more upright than large canopy.
Yeah, and definitely something that has a very narrow root ball or compact root ball.
Great.
Thanks, Rich. This is Peter. I only have one question to Michael, because I think I must have misheard this. I thought I heard you refer to the brick decomposing over time. Did I get that right?
So I think if you'll see at the main corner of Fifth or of Passyunk and Bainbridge, the orangey red brick is pretty prominent. What happens? It starts to kind of dance and it decomposes, meaning it kind of starts to go away, and it gets replaced with a darker black brick as it starts to erode down the street a little bit. It doesn't truly erode, it becomes black brick as it picks up towards Lithgow. So it's still a full masonry product. It's just the color of the masonry starts to change as it
You're talking about the
Excuse me,
pattern.
could we possibly see that image again?
Sure.
So that as we discuss this, because we're using words. Yeah, thank you.
So you'll see that this, it's primarily a orangey red brick. As it starts to move down the street, you start to see it starts to pick up with these black brick pieces, and then the black starts to become the primary material here, with some hints of this orangey red brick.
Okay, so the materials themselves are not decomposing. The
No.
pattern is
The pattern, yes. Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, Mike Harris, your turn. Yourself and any of your colleagues.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And thanks for correcting. We're the South Street Headhouse District, not Side Hill, but they're good neighbors though. So thanks for the presentation. I wanted to just clarify 157 units. What was the breakdown again between
I don't,
Next.
Christy, do you know that off the top of your head? We can verify that
I
100%.
have it open, Mike.
Okay.
We have 57 studios. We have 35 what we call junior one bedrooms. We have 36 one bedrooms, and we have 29 two bedrooms.
Okay, Mike, it's still yours.
Great, thank you. Also looking at the plans, your 37 parking spaces on the interior, basically that's access in and out on Lithgow, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's what it looked like. The other thing with the tree pits, are you envisioning new sidewalks, kind of a whole new sidewalk pour over there?
Yes.
To go with that?
And we are still coordinating with streets department just about the widths, the required, access way. In our meeting yesterday, we had a detailed conversation about that whole section across there on Bainbridge and Passyunk. So we're still going to be tweaking that a little bit to their satisfaction. But yes, we are looking at a whole new sidewalk sequence on both of those streets.
Okay. What's your lighting plan, your exterior lighting plan on the building or regarding pedestrian lighting around the, while you're pouring new sidewalks and planting new trees? We're pretty familiar with putting up pedestrian lightings as well. So
something we just haven't gotten into at this stage, but at this time, but certainly something we're going to be looking into as we continue down the process.
Okay. Yeah, I think it certainly with the activity there and the lighting plan that is there now, such as it's not, would be very valuable to have.
Sure. We'll definitely take that under consideration.
Okay, happy to work with you on that. Allison, do you have any questions?
I don't have many questions, but I am in favor of this project, I want to say. I think that it's going to be a great, it's going to really impact the neighborhood, and I'm going to say in a positive way. And I know a lot of people probably don't agree with me, but I would also like to then just follow up with, we did have a good neighborhood agreement, I believe, that was, hashed out in prior variations of this. Are you guys willing to, take that into account moving forward?
I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to, but I can.
Yeah, I can answer that question, Allison. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, so in prior iterations of this project, there was a community benefits agreement negotiated about the designs of the projects related to offsetting the any detriments impacted because of the variance relief that we were seeking. Some of the things that maybe were in those agreements are still relevant to the design, and we're certainly happy to continue those conversations. So if there are things you think would be relevant to this project, we're happy to continue those conversations.
I'm glad to hear that you're open to that, and I'm gonna have Mike Harris then follow up with what we might want to continue.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Allison. Thank you, Stephanie. That's great to hear. I don't think, I talked to Rick. I know he's listening, but I don't think he can join us otherwise. So I think that's it from the South Street Headhouse District. Peter, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, let's see what the audience, the participants from the neighborhood that are in here with us would like to ask or talk about. So Lucy, I'm going to rely on you to take them one at a time.
Okay. Joe Alkus has a comment and then a question. Joe Alkus is a public safety rep from the Bella Vista Association and a member of the 3rd District Police Advisory Council. He's talking about the challenges that we've had in Queen Village and in the South Street Headhouse area, ATVs, all of the issues that have been happening throughout the city. Noise complaints. There is significant traffic congestion in the area. His question is, what is going to happen to the parking, which the project will remove, with many of the businesses on South Street struggling and the added pressures of the problems that we're experiencing? Does the developer intend to address these problems?
Somebody needs to step
Thank
up.
you, Lucy. Yes, I think Harvey Spear would be the best person to answer questions about the parking. He's here as a representative of Easy Park, the owner of the property. Harvey, so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, parking, as you know, we've been in the parking business for over 50 years, and we would like nothing more than to have as much parking as we can. But because in today's world, what's going on, and especially in the city of Philadelphia, the taxes and the cost of construction has gone up substantially, and it's virtually almost impossible to build public parking today. The city taxes equate to about 55% of the gross, and when you add insurance and labor in that, it comes to about 74% of what we take in. We submitted to the city as a parking association to try to get some of these taxes reduced, and it didn't happen. If something does change on that scale with the city, that maybe they'll work with us. But right now, I can tell you, I'm the vice president of the Parking Association, and I can tell you just about everybody in the business all over the city they're not able to provide public parking. And believe me, we all want to. I've been in that business, and that's what we're looking forward to, but it is virtually impossible now to provide public parking. There will be substantial parking according to the zoning code here that will accommodate the people. And I can tell you also that with Uber, Lyft, and the high-speed trains, we really see a decrease in volume and the need for public parking. Most of our places are substantially down in volume. I don't think it'll be a big problem here, but of course, if I can get anything changed and have some public parking, being in the business, actually this location was my grandfather's first parking garage, was on 3rd and Bainbridge. And if you ever go on our website, you could take a look with my mother and my grandmother in the site. But so it's special to us. But again, I don't see how we can provide public parking at this point.
Thank you, Harvey. Lucy, let's get the next one.
Craig Morton asks, how does this number of all new residents impact the local public schools, which pre-pandemic were dealing with severe overcrowding? Can the ground floor tenant be a school district kindergarten center, for example?
Yeah, this is Peter with Elcor. We operate several thousand apartment units across the Mid-Atlantic, from Boston down really through the Southeast. And in our experience with new construction such as this, you see quite a small amount of school-age children that'll be in the building. So I really don't think it'll stress the local schools at all. As it relates to the retail tenants and the commercial on the first floor, again, we're gonna look at what makes best sense for the building and for the neighborhood. So we'll be considering all uses in that regard.
Next one, Lucy.
Okay. Seth Olson says, can we talk more about trees? I don't see a specific question there. So we'll move on to the next. Next is Joseph Lockley. Does anyone know how this project is going to be built? Is it being bid open shop, or is it bid by union contractors?
Yeah, this is Peter again. We suspect that the construction will be a mix of both union and open shop contractors.
Thank you. The next question is from Lauren Wegman. Will parking zones change? We already have tight parking. Adding more people to the area is going to make it near impossible to find zone parking. Will some of the paid zones change to residential? I would just like to address that for just a second, because I'm a little confused. There is residential parking along Bainbridge Street on both sides right now. it's both paid and residential.
I can answer if you would like me to answer as far as the project itself. In my opinion, there's going to be more than enough parking for the project itself, for the amount of units and the people. We have over 30 buildings that we run now, and we have very few people that need parking. So the ratio of parking for the size building is more than enough to accommodate this. As far as the city, what they do with the parking is pretty much out of our hands. I guess, Peter, maybe you can answer that part. But.
Yeah, no, I really can't weigh in any more than that, but I agree with you, Harvey. I think the parking we're providing for the project will be work for the number of residential units that we have.
Yeah, and Harvey, as you said, the zone district that I believe is controlled by the streets department, and it is entirely outside of our control with this development specifically.
Okay, the next question comes from Brian O'Donnell. The first two questions that he asked have already been addressed by Harvey. He asked that the final question is, isn't Lithgow one way? So will people parking have to come in from South Street and exit on Bainbridge?
It is one way, correct?
Okay. Austin Huber, do you have a question? Oh, okay. He's excited to see the parking lot develop. Okay. Question. Could the design team explain why the lobby is so large?
The lobby is not necessarily just a lobby just to get residents in and to the elevators. The lobby is actually going to serve multi-functions. There's going to be the leasing offices are going to be within the lobby, in addition just to general circulation, as residents will come down the elevators and get access to the bike room. There will also be some interactive space down there. Generally, the building does not have a tremendous amount of overall amenity space, but that space down there, even when the leasing office is closed down for the evening, can serve the residents of the building as a multi-use space and really be, Uber waiting, things like that down there, even some co-working and things like that.
Yeah, and just to add, we'll also have our mail room and any package lockers and package room there as well for residents.
Okay, thank you very much. Pat Panzera asks, is this all rental units or owner occupied? If owner occupied, is there an HOA?
This will be all rental units.
Thank you. Paul Misinek asks, how many parking spots are you going to have for your building residents, and how many parking spaces will be taken away from the streets?
Well, there's 37 parking spaces in the project, and they'll be for use by the residents of the project. Harvey, I don't know the exact number of spots that are currently on the lot. I don't know if you know or not offhand.
It's approximately 80 spots on the parking lot, and there's 37 for the building. And as far as on the street, I don't think there's going to be a need to take away any of the street parking for this. The retail, there may be a loading zone for somebody to pick up, but I doubt. I'm not the city. The city will make that recommendation. But I can tell you, for the residential itself, there will be more than enough spots that are off the street.
Thank you. Catherine Sirik asks, what is the target demographic for residents? It's a very high percentage of small apartments to family size. If you could address that, please.
Yeah, this is Peter. Really, we fair housing and whatnot. We open our doors to everyone that qualifies, and so everyone's welcome who qualifies.
Thank you. Sharon Saluki asks, what's the timeline for the project?
Yeah, we intend to break ground on the project by year end, probably late Q3 or early Q4 of 2022. And it's approximately a 16-month build.
Thank you. Catherine Sirix asked another question. about green space. Almost all of it will be in shade and divided into 2 strips, one that will not be visible from the street. How will that be prevented from becoming attractive to crime?
Currently, the majority of that space is not would not be accessible. I mean, there will be fences and whatnot around there. I mean, theoretically, I may not stop everybody from getting back in there, but is the intent, I would assume for Pete, not speaking for you, but that there would be some sort of security component, making sure that nothing's going on back there, very well lit, with underbuilding lighting and everything back there to really deter any crime happening.
Yeah, correct. We'll have lighting, security cameras, etc.
Okay, Joseph Alkus is asking another question, and it's about the ratio of units to parking spaces. Harvey, I think that you've already addressed that.
Yes.
And Lauren Wegman's all asked the same question. Vicky Giba is asking, is there a reason why the building is significantly higher than any other building in the area? It doesn't seem to fit at all in the Queen Village area.
Just as an initial matter, and I'll let Mike to speak to the design of the building, but this site is on CMX3. So it's zoned particularly to have higher density than what might be existing on the streets around it. As I said earlier, the project is compliant with the zoning code requirements, including the height requirement.
I'll just echo what Stephanie said. I mean, we're not providing anything overly large in floor to floor heights. It's going to be 9-foot ceilings for the residential. So, and then standard retail heights for, appropriate tenants here. So we are trying to keep the building, as short as we can. Economics play into that as well. So, but it is a CMX3 zoning district. So.
Thank you. Isaac Keller asks about the bicycle parking room. He says it looks small for the number of residents. Does it take into account larger cargo bikes and heavier e-bikes?
The room is sized for the number of bike parking spaces that we are taking advantage of for the project. And it is utilizing a vertical bike storage that we've had many successes with over the years. So it does not at this point take into account for e-bikes or any charging or anything like that. But it is vertical, standard bicycle parking at this point.
Thank you. Brian O'Donnell asks if you could comment on aesthetics as to keeping a similar look to the historic nature of the neighborhood. For example, the brick color.
Not 100% sure how to respond to that one, but but what we try to do is really just blend the architecture into the surrounding area, in addition to designing a more current multifamily building that would be appropriate for the residents, and try to kind of mesh those two together and consider both of those opportunities in the design of the architecture.
Thank you. I'm going back. I inadvertently overlooked Linda Palekia's question. Sorry about that. She asked a question about truck traffic. She is saying that trucks are most likely to go down Passyunk Avenue and then turn on to Bainbridge, since Bainbridge is not a wide street once it crosses Passyunk and Fifth. If this is the case, how will those trucks affect traffic on East Passyunk Avenue? Passyunk's mostly residential. An increase in truck traffic will have a major impact on the roadbed and the houses along it.
Kevin, you want to take that? I mean, ultimately our goal is we have to provide loading spaces for these buildings. The goal is to get the trucks off of the street, out of the traffic and into our building as quickly as possible.
I can add something to that. The prior plan had enough room for a WB50 truck, which was substantially higher because of the need with the supermarket. And it was enough room for that large, that's a huge truck. This will not have a need because we're not going to have a big store like that. And also the prior plan had a higher plan than this. It was more, I think it was 2 stories higher than this. And we had support of both groups. And that this is less density than the other one. It's more apartments, but it's less height than the other plan that was approved by you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, Harvey, as kind of you mentioned, smaller retail space, it wouldn't be as large of a tractor trailer truck to utilize the space. It would be a smaller box truck.
Exactly.
Seth Olson asks a question. How much are rent prices across the different unit types? We answered the second question, which are the types of tenants you expect to live in the building. That has been addressed already. And his second question then is, have you determined how much tree canopy coverage will cover the streets?
On the canopy coverage, you know, I know Richard asked that earlier. We are going to evaluate the tree species along there. Pete, I can kick it to you on rent premiums, but I suspect that's something you're still working out.
Yeah, excuse me, correct. We're you know, look, there'll be market rate units, so it'll be you know, competitive with you know, other area Class A apartment communities, and it'll achieve the you know, the rent that is suitable at the time we're leasing the units.
Okay. Craig Morton asks, can the number of 2-bedroom units be reduced in order to further reduce the likelihood of school-age children?
Sorry.
I'll just add that, you know, in the vast amount of apartments that we do in the Philadelphia metro, you know, currently we're seeing the vast majority of 2 bedrooms actually being rented by couples that use the second bedroom for infrequent guests, but typically at home work, whether that's a 1-bedroom den or a 2-bedroom, and that's the overarching use for those types of units.
Thank you. The next question is from Steve Ram. Will any of the parking be leased to tenants? Will a 2-car family in a 2-bedroom be able to have 2 spaces?
Yeah, we're still determining that with you know, our operations team when we lease up the building and how it all shakes out. So we're not sure exactly how that will work yet at this point.
Thank you. R. Jones asks, what are the rates of car ownership, i.e. the required parking, in these other buildings you referenced as being low, assuming less than 25% of your tenants will require parking spaces seems unreasonably low?
I could partly answer that question. Right now, the city itself is reducing the requirements for parking. I know that in Old City right now, right now I think it's let me know if I'm wrong, 3 to 10, and I think they're trying to reduce it even lower than that. And I could tell you that it's not a need for there to be more parking for residential, from my experience in the residential that we operate throughout the city. I guess you can
That's
answer.
correct, Harvey. It's usually a 3 to 10, you know, 3 parking spaces per 10 units with permissible reductions per the zoning code.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris McNichol asked, the existing lot gets very busy, particularly on weekends, feeding businesses on South Street. With ongoing efforts to pedestrianize South Street and eliminate weekend parking, what comfort can you give businesses that the removal of the public parking will not materially impact operations?
Do you want me to answer that one?
Sure, Harvey.
Yeah, as I said, the trend is going more and more toward people using Uber or Lyft. In the future, I hate to admit this, but there's a lot of people that are going to be having self-driven cars, and in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot more with the electric cars. And in the future, I don't think you're going to see any other city, Philadelphia especially, increasing number of parking spaces that are needed.
Thank you. Linda Pilecki, thanks for repeating your question. I think that has been responded to. I've received a question that was not made public, and it is there a planned manned security entry desk planned? How would move in, move out for the 150 tenants be accommodated? Are they using the loading dock?
Yeah, they would be using the loading dock, and all would be coordinated through the operations team. You know, there will be a probably 6 day a week, management leasing office that'll be manned at the property. It won't be 24/7, but it will be during business hours and Saturdays, and probably even at times on Sundays. And all will be coordinated in terms of loading and move-ins and whatnot with the management staff. So it won't just be a free-for-all by any means.
Thank you. Matt Sandler asks, South Street has many empty South storefronts. Do you really think your retail space will succeed?
Well, we hope, and we hope, bringing additional life into the neighborhood will not only help our retail spaces, but that of South Street as well.
William Knapp asks, do you think tenants from these apartments would patronize local businesses and therefore help the neighborhood retail thrive?
Yeah, without question. We think one of the amenities of this building is the neighborhood it's in. So we, absolutely expect that, our residents will live, work, and play in this neighborhood.
Thank you. C. Cavallari did not have a question, but a comment that there's already too much traffic on Bainbridge. Brian O'Donnell asks, he wants to clarify a question about the brick color. It's very modern, not in line with the historic nature of the neighborhood. It feels like this building sticks out as far different than buildings and homes near it.
We can certainly look at the brick color and take that into further consideration.
Yeah, and just as another comment to that, the building and the property itself is not located in a historic district specifically. The property is also not designated, so there is a little bit more flexibility allowed by the city to consider more modern architecture. But certainly, as Mike said, we can take that into consideration.
Thank you. Matt Sandler says that there's too much uncertainty regarding the tenant parking ratio. Thank you. Steve Ram says, do we hear the rent prices asked by Seth? Steve, rent prices are not being addressed because that's what the market will bear. Susan Kogar says, key to the success of this project will be the ground floor retail. It has to add quality of life to the neighborhood. Can you give any additional information on your selection of retail? Susan, I think that was addressed earlier, and the retail has not been selected as yet, but I know that someone may want to reiterate. You're talking to brokers?
Yes, we will engage the brokerage community, of course. And, again, I'll reiterate that we have a very vested interest in a strong amenity, retail in the base of the building. It's going to support the rents and the residents above it, as well as the rest of the neighborhood. So we're aligned in wanting to get great retail in there.
Okay, Joseph Lockley is asking a second question. If our union carpenter members will have the opportunity to work on a project in their own community where they reside.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone will have an opportunity to bid when the project is ready for that.
Okay. Linda Peden asks, have you ever tried to get parking here on weekend nights? Just try it once. She's talking from a resident perspective. Catherine Sirik says the residential floors will be wood frame construction with exterior walls being fire resistant. Will the building be equipped with sprinklers?
Yes, it will be equipped with a full NFPA 13 sprinkler system, which is a full commercial grade sprinkler system.
Thank you. Joseph Alkis asked another question about schools, elementary schools. Currently, Meredith is at 120% of capacity. Will this project or people on it be able to address this topic?
what's
No,
the-
I think this topic has been addressed, if you don't mind. I mean, obviously, this building will be open to anybody who qualifies to live here.
Thank you. Seth Olson asks if the building will be pet friendly.
Yes.
Okay, Matt Sandler, we're making a lot of comments right now and not asking questions, and some of these have been addressed. Will the building have a green roof? Eric Hafler asked this question.
The building will have greenery on the roof around the rooftop terrace. There will be plantings up there, you know, as much as we can in that area there. But the majority of the roof will not necessarily be covered in a traditional green roof at this point. However, I can with somewhat confidence say, Pete, for you that the development team is heavily considering a lead building here. We are going through the evaluation process right now, even outside of any type of density bonuses and whatnot. So it's definitely something we are going to be considering, which is a much more sustainably focused building.
Thank you. Just a general comment. I see about 42 other messages. I will be focused on those questions that have not been asked before, and we'll be quickly going over comments that have not previously been made.
That's
Seth
the right
Olson,
way- That's
go
the
ahead.
right way to proceed, Lucy.
Thank you. Seth Olson asked, what sorts of trees will be on the roof?
To be determined.
Thank you. Christina Patrice is just noting that at 6th and Passyunk, there was a major explosion, I guess, of water at 6th and Bainbridge. How will the project be sensitive to construction noise and inconvenience?
I mean, we'll certainly follow all guidelines of L&I for construction hours and whatnot. I don't know if I can say more than that.
Thank you. Catherine Sirik asked a very similar question. William Knapp, do you expect the tax assessment of the proposed building will ultimately be higher than under the current use and therefore contribute additional revenue for schools and city services? I presume tenants will be subject to wage and sales taxes.
Yeah, I mean, the completed building will certainly have a higher assessment than the current surface parking lot.
Thank you. Alan Gottlieb says, will there be any contribution to the beautification of Bainbridge Green?
I think, you know, if there is, you know, particular things that we may want to revisit in terms of what was in an original community benefits agreement that might be relevant to this project going forward. As we said, we're definitely open to having those conversations.
I can answer that too. We discussed this and we are considering what we can do here because it's betterment of Bainbridge Green really helps the views of the new building. So we are talking about that now.
Thank you. Okay, we've addressed the topic of a green roof or solar. Catherine Sirik says there's an opportunity for solar panels on the roof. Michael Verrell says, curious if there are planning to do any short-term rentals versus standard rental terms.
Not determined at this point, but you know, generally speaking, we operate standard rental terms with our properties.
Yeah, and just a note too. So the proposed use on this project is for multifamily housing. That, you know, there are specific regulations in the city that pertain to lodging being rented out generally for less than 30 days. That requires you to have a license as a hotel, as a visitor accommodations. There are more limited rules for limited lodging, but that's not something they're considering at this time.
Okay, thank you. Christina Patrice says there's a mural that represents my will to live in the neighborhood. I need to keep that mural. Will the building have any murals or artwork of any kind?
I think at least currently on the exterior, nothing is planned. However, understanding the vibrancy of the neighborhood, our full design team is about to start the process of considering what we're going to do for the interiors. And, we may be able to really incorporate some really interesting things into the lobby that could really, reinforce the neighborhood and the commitment to the surrounding area.
Chris McNichols says, can Mr. Spear please provide the current average weekend utilization on the current parking lot? Specifically, how many of the roughly 83 spots remain available on an average during the weekends?
I can say at this point, we didn't have, we had a terrible 2 years or year and a half with COVID. And I do see people coming back, and the lot did some turnover, but as far as the utilization of the lot, it depends on there's a lot of things that go into consideration. Before COVID was the weather. I will say this, the fact that there's more people in the neighborhood that are going to be living in this building. I know that some of the store owners that I spoke to are very happy that these people will be patronizing the stores and they'll be walking to the stores. As far as the utilization of the lot, there are nights that we do over 80 cars, and there's some nights that we do 20 cars on the weekend. But I think, as I said, in the future, I don't see the demand getting any higher than it is, because you're going to have more people living here, and you're going to have more people frequenting the retail stores by walking from this building. And it'll bring more life to the neighborhood, where people will live in the neighborhood and walk to the stores.
Thank you very much. I believe that is the end of the questions via chat. If anyone else has a final question, if you'd please add it right now. Otherwise, I will turn this back over to Peter.
Thank you, Lucy.
If I may, I'm sorry, Peter. I went ahead and raised my hand, and I will lower it now. Hi, everybody. My name is Eleanor Ingersoll. I am president of the Queen Village Neighbors Association. I want to thank you very much for this presentation. Myself, on behalf of QVNA, along with Mike Harris on behalf of SSHD, worked really hard the first go around of this project. So I'm really happy to hear that the discussion about applicable elements of the community benefits agreement can still be on the table, and I look forward to talking to you about that. As far as the retail spaces go, I just want to clarify, are they two separate and independent spaces? And I heard about the possible construction to accommodate restaurants. Is that in one or both? And hypothetically, if a restaurant did go in, what would be the seating for said restaurant?
Let me try to follow that. So they are independent. The larger one, which is about 4,000 square feet, is at the corner of Passyunk and Bainbridge. The smaller, which is, I believe, in the 1,700 to 1,800 square foot range, is at the opposite corner of Lithgow and Bainbridge. So both have accommodations for exhaust to be able to take in up to the roof, so that you don't have that large retrofitted exhaust popping out from the side of the building. But at this point, I think that's the majority of what we know at this point about the retail spaces.
And before I give it up, I'm very happy to hear about street lighting, which will be absolutely paramount. The canopy is good to hear, and I do, even though it would be in the purview of the streets department, I'm sure lobbying from yourself about consideration or looking at a plan for 2 ways on a portion of Bainbridge to alleviate some of that congestion would be very helpful. Is that something that is on the table as far as partnering with the neighborhood association if that is deemed necessary?
It's something we really don't have control over. While we can ask about it in our conversations with streets, it's really something that they're going to have to take the lead on. I would suspect that maybe you guys would add tremendous value to that conversation. So, we can certainly pass the message along. Just see, it's something we would assume we'd be supportive.
I think that it is two-way now, Bainbridge Street. There's in front of this is one way, but it is a two-way street right now.
You are correct. It is, it would be interesting to look at options for alleviating some of that congestion, which happens right there at 5th, Passyunk, and Bainbridge. So maybe down the line, we can discuss that. Thank you so much. I do believe that David Auspitz also has his hand up before we pass it back off to Peter Piven.
Before we open it to David, I just want to say that Joe Alkus has asked if Eleanor would contact the school district about any possible additional stress on Meredith and look at the overcrowding. Just a comment. And then
Absolutely well.
Thank you. And then Christina Patrice asked if there is potential to take a photograph of the mural that is there now and to put it in the lobby of the building as art.
I think everything's on the table. We could certainly talk to Pete and his team about that, about opportunities for that, understand who the artist is, see what opportunities maybe the artist could collaborate with something smaller internally even. So it's all on the table. We'll talk about that in design and take that under consideration.
Okay. And I think David Auspitz, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, Harvey, I just want to put a couple things out so people will know them and you'll know them. When they talk about the Meredith School adds about $150,000 to the sales price of a house if you're in the catchment area for Meredith. Last January, and I don't know if you and your partners and your teams heard about this, an open parking spot at the Pew houses went for $500 a month. There is a private parking lot that it's $250,000 for a space and $250 a month maintenance. Your dad's old place on American Street, I believe, is now $350 with a raise coming for the new year, $350 a month. But I'm just giving you these prices so that maybe you'll become aware that possibly providing more parking for the tenants would help relieve some of the impact of having people that live in what will be priced and has to be priced apartments that you're offering. They have cars and they go down the shore and they want to come home and pull into their place. But I just wanted you to know about this stuff, that maybe your numbers. The other day, we had a reason to go up to the University of Pennsylvania, 3737 Market Street from 3rd and Bainbridge. Normally, we take the Uber Black. It was $83 each way, $166. So I decided maybe I shouldn't be such a patrician, and I found out that the regular Uber at 9 o'clock on a beautiful sunny morning was $43 each way, or $86 round trip. I don't know how many people are going to continue on with Uber as their prices have increased and will increase. If you remember, Uber's yet to make a profit, but we're not here to debate. We're here to say, I just want you to really look into it. Queen Village, South Street, Headhouse, they supported the other project. And, I think they would probably wind up supporting this. And I just want you to take everything into consideration, that possibly some of the things people are telling you, they might not be correct. And just out of lack of knowledge, things happen. So it's important to check it out. The one other thing is, when you talk about so many efficiencies and 1-bedrooms and junior 1-bedrooms, they should really talk to local realtors who practice in Queen Village, because you either have at these prices that people have to charge. I'm not complaining about the price, but you usually have either a roommate situation, or you have people who, I don't know what the attraction anymore in this area is for young single people the way it was. I do know the attraction in Fishtown and other areas. And you've always been a great leader up in at Second and Market, and you know that that area also has suffered, and not just from COVID. It's been a problem. So I just feel when I look at it, and I want to encourage it, and I'm excited. I would love to see if maybe to the 3rd or 5th floor, whatever, they could wash the building with some light so that area really looks alive. But I just want to make sure you have all the facts and figures from local people that know what's happening in this district. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, David. I just want to answer one thing. You brought up that it's about $350 a month to park. And I've known you a long time, and I know you know the parking business, you know the building business. That $350 a month, if you take 74% off of that for taxes, insurance, and labor, you end up with $90 to pay your bills. That's the profit on the $350. People are not happy to pay $350, but they don't realize that the bottom line is only $90, not $350. So if you take $90 and you have to build this parking space for, it depends where it is, it's almost 100,000 a space, maybe 75,000 a space. It doesn't even pay for the construction of the space. And I hate to admit that, but I'm in the business, and that's one of the reasons why you will not see any new parking garages. But the good thing about this is we found that this type of building in our buildings, there's not that much of a demand. We will be able to rent some of the spaces out. I don't believe that if the building is even 90% full, that we're going to be bursting at the seams with people that want to park. I can tell you. So
Thank you,
as far
Harvey.
as the apartments, I guess they can speak for that.
It's Peter. I have a last question for Ms. Magnania before we close, and that is that our last inquiry at CDR indicate that there was no scheduled hearing yet. Do you know of one? Are you yet scheduled to be heard?
We are not. So CDR will most likely release their schedule for February next week. There are, I've been told, several cases that were continued from the December meeting. There was no January meeting. The cases that are being asked back will have preference for the scheduling on the for the February meeting. So we may be on the February agenda, but we may be pushed to March or later. We really have not been told.
If you are the one that is contacted, would you be so kind as to inform us?
Yes.
Thank you.
And certainly I expect that we'll be, in communications about some of the comments and the questions that have been raised here, particularly in relationship to any, possible community benefits agreement. So you have my contact information. Feel free to send any of that to me, and we'll stay in touch as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, all, thank you. Thank you.
Peter, before we sign off, I just wanted to make a comment to the design team in regard to the trees. Just as an FYI, the Queen Village tree tenders over the last 6 years have planted about 650 trees in Queen Village. Our trees are city curb trees, and there's a wide variety of them that we work through the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society. So although I don't speak on behalf of Queen Village Neighbors Association, I can say that if the design team would like to be introduced to our Queen Village tree tenders in order to have some insight into the types of trees that work really well on our curbs here, we'd be happy to make some connections for you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the presentation, for the responsiveness. We appreciate that. I'd ask the Queen Village Zoning Committee to stay on. We'll excuse everybody else. We'll have a brief